The following is an exclusive presentation of WI Garden Media, the voice of Garden Talk Radio. Coming up on the program today, we're going to discuss problems in your garden and how to deal with them, as well as building the soil you've always wanted with what you have. Our guest is author Lee Miller with us, and we'll answer your garden questions. The hour's full, so join us.
You are listening to the most informationally packed hour of garden-focused radio in the country and on the internet with your host, husband and wife team Joey and Holly Baird. This is the Gardening with Joey and Holly radio show.
And welcome to another edition of the Gardening with Joey and Holly radio show. Happy to have you along, allowing us to be part of your day. I am your host, Joey Baird. Beside me is my wife, co-host, best friend, and gardening partner,
Holly Baird.
This program is for you, about you, to help your garden grow better, to maintain your landscape, grow healthier trees, make your grass look greener, as well as preserving what you grow. Happy you're tuning in, whether you're doing that on one of the 18 AM and FM frequencies. Broadcasting our program here in 2024, Season 8 of the program, podcast replay and in-studio video replay, podcast through our parent website, thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com, or somewhere in between. Hey, thank you for coming along. If you got a question, or you just let us know where you're listening from, you can do that as well in two different avenues. GardenTalkRadio@gmail.com, the email address here. GardenTalkRadio@gmail.com, or the toll-free number, coast to coast, is 1-800-927-SHOW. That's 1-800-927-7469. Drop us a message if we can't get to you, and we'll get back to you with the answer to your question. Well, before we jump into the program, Holly, it's time for this week's Joke of the Week.
Why was the cucumber mad?
Why? Because he was too chilled or something?
No, because
chill it as a cucumber?
No,
Yeah,
as cool as a cucumber.
Okay.
Because it was in a pickle.
Cucumbers are pickles. This week's joke is brought to you by Rescue.com.
Rescue.com is American-made products to keep your family, home, and yard protected from pest insects like wasps, hornets, yellow jackets, flies, ants, and more. Learn more at Rescue.com. That's RESCUE.com.
Well, dealing with problems in your garden, there's a lot of them which you can deal with. And we're going to go through a few of them here in the time that is allotted in segment 1, Holly.
Correct. So we're going to talk about some problems. So first one is powdery mildew. This is a common problem, especially as we go into August. We're not quite in August yet, but it happens a lot in August.
Wet nights, yeah.
Yeah, and as summer, I don't want to say summer comes to an end, but it's as we're kind of shifting a little bit towards fall. You're like, August is not the end of summer, and it's not. But as we shift towards fall, the days do start to get shorter again, and the nights have a tendency to move a little bit cooler, not aggressively, but a little bit cooler, and this causes this chance for powdery mildew. So what occurs is that during the day, especially in times like August in most places, there's often a lot of humidity. And with that humidity during the day and then a little bit of the shorter days and the cooler nights, it tends to stick around. And so that can settle on the leaves of pretty much any plant that has flat leaves, like squashes, pumpkins, cucumbers.
Beans, cucumbers.
Yeah, squashes. So you get this like powdery mildew, and it looks just like powder. And when you rub your finger on it, you can kind of feel it, and it's a common problem. So a few things you can do is you can look for a disease-resistant variety, and you're like, well, I already planted these. So obviously that's something you could do next year. You can make sure that you do space them apart properly. A lot of times this happens because the leaves are overlapping, so it gives them a chance for the humidity to kind of just like hang out. But the other thing you can do is you're basically going to take there's a lot of household remedies. There's vinegar.
Well, stop from watering above and getting the leaves wet. That's part of it.
Well, if it rains, you
can't do that. Correct. Yeah.
So obviously, you want to avoid getting the leaves wet if you can.
And increase air circulation in order to get what moisture is on the leaves to dry. Powdery mildew hates water but loves new growth, and warm weather between 68 and 77 degrees is ideal for the spores to develop.
Right. So with powdery mildew, let's talk about some solutions here. What you can do is aside from that, is you can find a homemade solution. We've used vinegar and milk, and so not together. These are two different solutions. So you take 1 to 3 parts vinegar to water, and then you spray on the powdery mildew. It's going to help break it up. And then there's the same thing for milk. Some people...
Baking soda is one. A tablespoon of baking soda with a quart of water. Spray that on the plant thoroughly. The high pH of the baking soda makes it alkaline, which prevents the mildew spores from thriving. The purpose we want to break up the spores is because it would create a layer of... prevention of sun getting to the plant, and the plant is basically going to die because it doesn't have the photosynthesis or allows the sun to penetrate the leaves and do what the plant needs to do in the summer.
Right. So that's powdery mildew. So let's talk about blight. There's different types of blight, but the most common blight is
tomato
blight. What's it called? Early blight.
Early blight, and then there's late blight. But we're gonna deal with early blight because that's the time in which we're in right now.
Right. So there's blight that you can get through the air, and then there's blight that you can get through your soil. So we're going to talk about the soil blight that happens to your tomatoes. And this is not too late to help, I don't want to say eliminate because it might not eliminate it at this point, but to help control.
Well, you're never going to eliminate the early blight in the soil. You can control it and reduce
I'm saying like you might have some already.
Right. Yeah. And we can help you with that.
Yes.
You're going to notice discoloration on the lower leaves of the plant. The plants are supposed to be lush and green, but you're going to see blotchiness. You're going to see rusty looking pigmentation or yellowish or even white areas. Typically at the lower portions of the leaves because the soil has splashed from the ground level up to the leaves and discolored them. That is the early blight. And if left uncontrolled, it will progressively work up the plant. And then by the time fall comes, you're going to have a plant with a bunch of fruit and no leaves, and it's actually dead because it doesn't have the capabilities of absorbing the sunlight. So what you want to do is if you do see that infection on the plant leaves, do not be scared to remove them. Cut off up to 25% of the plant if necessary in order to discard that infection of the plant. Then you can control that by clearing out the lower 6 to 8 inches of leaves and branches coming off of the main stem. Mulch underneath there. And if you are in you can also apply a handful of yellow whole grain cornmeal prior to mulching. That also has a beneficial bacteria in it called trichoderma that will fight the bad bacteria, which is the early blight in your soil. Doesn't eliminate it, doesn't make it disappear. It reduces it and fights it. By doing this, by a whole grain cornmeal, yellow, mulching, continually trimming the bottom of the tomato plants, the reduction of early blight will be very visible. You will reduce it by 80 or 90%. Sometimes in our instance with the heavy mulch, we don't have it at all because of those 3 steps.
Right. So there's that. So lots of weeds. This is a common problem, especially it seems like with the warmer
rain every 72 hours.
Rain every 72 hours, the warmer weather, etc. So one thing is that you can do is good old pull in the weeds and get them as early as possible. This will help eliminate their possible propagation that a lot of weeds just automatically do, and also will help it seem like a less daunting task. Otherwise, you can use things like weed what's it called?
Barrier cloth.
Yeah, barrier cloth.
Well, we had Joseph Loofhouse on the program about a month or so ago, and he's out in the desert where he does have weeds, and there's a lot of weeds, he says, and you can go back and check that out in the archives and podcast and in-studio video replay, and he allows his garden to just run nature's course. He doesn't weed, and then he selects the vegetables and the fruits that have survived and save those seeds because those are the strongest of those that have grown. So he doesn't spend time weeding. He allows selection of the strongest and then plants those the next year. But you may not choose to let your garden look like a pasture in the front or backyard because of whatever reason you have. So removal of weeds at smallest stage is the easiest, and preventing them from going to seed, regardless if you're using weed cloth or weed barrier, is also the way in which you can reduce the amount of weeds in ground or raised bed that you are going to deal with. In a container, in a grow bag, it's going to be very, very simplistic in order to control those weeds.
Absolutely. So you want to get ahead, and if you feel like it's a daunting task, you can do a little bit every evening. You can, get your kids involved, grandkids, whatever. Say we're going to go to the garden and pull some weeds and we're going to ice cream after dinner, blah, blah, blah. Like there's a lot of, make it fun. You can do that.
And real quickly, before we get out of this segment here, inconsistent watering is a problem of a lot of issues, from blossom end rot on tomatoes to blossom end rot on zucchini plants to undeveloped and improperly developed fruits and vegetables. Yes, pollination is a big factor, but if it doesn't have the consistent watering to allow the proper nutrients and minerals to be uptaken, you're going to have a problem. So keeping the soil moist or damp like a sponge, not wet, real wet, and then dry out to a bone and then wet again, that's going to damage your plants and the production of your garden. Well, Walton's has everything you need for your barbecue and for hunters and fisher people.
Yeah, we know you care about where your food comes from. You got to think about, the meat aside from the fruits and vegetables. At Walton's, you can get all the equipment, seasoning, and supplies to make sausage, jerky, and any other meat product your way to your high standards. Do you want to make snack sticks that people will actually like? Walton's does have a informational site called meatgistics.com with a community of almost 15,000 users who help give their opinion and guidance on meat processing issues. You can also go to waltonsinc.com. They have everything you need. They have all sorts of meat grinders, mixers, sausage stuffers. They have seasonings, spices, spice mixes, all the good stuff there at waltonsinc.com. Walton's everything but the meat. You can use code GROW50, GROW50 to save 10% off your orders of $50 or more.
When we return, building the soil you've always wanted with what you've already got. You're tuned in to the Gardening with Joey and Holly radio show.
Have a garden question? Give Joey and Holly a call now or anytime 24/7. Just dial 1-800-927-SHOW. If you can't get through, leave a message and they will call you back. Call now, 1-800-927-SHOW.
Make hand watering easy and enjoyable with HoseLink retractable hose reels. No more tripping over hoses, kinks, tangles, and avoiding rolling the hose up. With an automatic retractable HoseLink saves you time and effort manually coiling up your hose, leaving your focus on the things that will bring you joy in your garden. Available in multiple colors and lengths, you'll be sure to find the retractable hose that works for you. To find out more and to buy online via hoselink.com, use coupon code radio10 for $10 discount. Mantis tillers, the premium long-lasting gas-powered tillers, are the perfect solution for any garden. This Mantis machine is available with 2 or 4 cycle engines with a 19-inch or 16-inch tilling width. Your DIY companion in your garden and your lawn converts easily for edging, aerating, and more with optional attachments. Find details at mantis.com. Dig planting holes from a comfortable standing position. Step, twist, pull, and plant. Visit ProPlugger.com.
If you could double the life of your raised bed boxes by sealing the wood with a clear, non-toxic wood preservative, would you? Well, now you can with a clear, penetrating product called Internal Wood Stabilizer. It's 100% non-toxic and easy to apply. Seal your untreated wood surfaces, even chicken coops, by spraying on Internal Wood Stabilizer. It's invisible, seals the wood from the inside out, and never wears off. Recommended by organic gardening experts. Internal Wood Stabilizer. Check it out at timberprocoatingsusa.com.
Are you ready to take control of your home's comfort? With Mr. Cool DIY Direct, empower yourself with our top-notch do-it-yourself cooling and heating solution. Introducing the Mr. Cool 4th Generation Mini Split, the DIY-friendly way to keep your home perfectly comfortable all year round. Our systems come with everything you need for installation, including our patented pre-charge line sets, eliminating the need for expensive professional help. Visit MrCoolDIYDirect.com to learn more and to take the first step towards a cooler, more comfortable home. Don't forget, use promo code GARDEN for a special discount and free nationwide shipping. Mr. Cool DIY Direct. Cool your house, heat your space, all by yourself. Pomona's Universal Pectin is a high-quality pectin that gels reliably with low amounts of any sweetener. If you're trying to reduce the amount of sugar in your diet, you'll love Pomona's Universal Pectin. Now you can make healthy homemade jams and jellies sweetened to your taste. You can use sugar or honey to sweeten. Pomona's Universal Pectin keeps indefinitely when stored in an airtight container. Easy to use, versatile, and comes with directions and recipes in every box. Find out more and where to buy at PomonaPectin.com. Also available at natural food stores and online.
Rootmaker starts your plants off right and keeps them going through harvest. From their seed starting trays with an innovative design that air prunes the roots to their large variety of grow bags, 1 to 60 gallons. Their products will provide you the harvest you've never seen before. Visit rootmaker.com. Use coupon code ROOT24 to save 15% off your order at rootmaker.com. That coupon code is ROOT24 to save 15% off your order at rootmaker.com. Welcome back to the Gardening with Joy and Holly radio show. We're going to talk about how you can build your soil with what you already have. But first, a word from our good friends at Honey Bee Healthy.
Since 2000, Honey Bee Healthy Inc. has helped beekeepers maintain healthy and thriving hives, attracting pollinators to your garden. This year is as simple as hanging a hummingbird feeder with a mixture of sugar water and Honey Bee Healthy Original. Don't be alarmed to see birds, bees, and butterflies dining together at the feeder. Pollinators coexist peacefully. Honey Bee Healthy is offering 10% discount on an 8-ounce bottle of Honey Bee Healthy Original to the show's listeners. Enter discount code BEGARDEN, that's BE Garden, BEE Garden, at checkout. For more information, mixing instructions, and a purchase, visit honeybeehealthy.com.
All the coupon codes you hear throughout the program can be found under the Money tab at our parent website, thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com. So, we all want good soil, and we may not all have the ability to go purchase good compost from our local independent garden center. We may not have the funds. You may have a 2-acre field that you need to get your soil more better, or you just don't have the finances to invest a couple of $100 or, in some instances, a couple of $1,000 and dozens of yards of compost. So what do you do?
So I'm going to start, because I'm just going to, I don't want to assume that this year is a wash at this point if you're trying to build your soil, but we are.
People build soil and build beds all year round.
Right. But I'm going to assume that you're building it for next year at this point. And I think that's a fair assumption.
Okay.
So I'm going to talk about leaves. Leaves are a powerhouse of building your soil. Leaves are free. You can find them off of trees. In the fall, they will help add nutrients to your soil. It's a natural compost. Worms will come to your soil because they will be being fed leaves, and then the worms will come and aerate your soil. They bring nutrients to your soil. They add nutrients to your soil. So I feel that leaves are, to me, if I was like, hey, I'm trying to build my soil, that would be my top priority, especially if I was on a budget. I mean, I'm always on a budget, but like, if I was like, I really
trying to make $2 stretch like 20.
I really want to build my soil. I want the cheapest option. That's the cheapest option to me personally. I think is leaves. Coffee grounds too would be good to mix in, but then you have to typically go somewhere, figure out where to get the coffee grounds
and
from.
You can do that in bulk.
Yeah.
That can be done. There's the big coffee shop chains that will give it free coffee grounds. The best ones are the local ones where they ask you to bring a bucket in, and when it's full, they'll call you.
Right.
5 gallons, real quick.
But that still is, if you're like, I don't want to have to drive somewhere. I just want to find a resource that I can use, or I can create, or whatever. Leaves would be my go-to. But with that being said, coffee grounds would be my second go-to, because they also attract the worms. And you really cannot put unless you're dumping truckfuls of coffee grounds, you're not going to alter your soil chemistry.
It's going to be best to do this in a combination of different methods, and it's not necessarily, unless you're bringing compost in by the truckload, this may be a several-year process. Now, let's say you got sandy soil. What do? You add organic material like compost that you make, or well-rotted manure from a reliable source in which is not feeding those animals chemicals through the feed or hay that can be a persistent herbicide like Grazon, or that kills the broadleaves in the field, but doesn't affect the grasses, and it doesn't affect the animal in which it's consuming, and it's still active once the animal has digested it, kicked it out the backside, and turned it into compost. You want more on that? Go to your favorite search engine and type in Killer Compost, Joe Lampel. He's got multiple articles and video about that type of topic. There are good sources that are out there. You just have to do some research in order to do that. So you want the soil to retain water and nutrient. Keep the plant roots in place, and you can work 3 or 4 inches of organic material into the soil each year. In whatever means, leaves or coffee grounds or a combination of manure or compost. If you can buy a little compost each year or make some, that will help build that soil up. Now, that's for sandy-ish soil. If you have clay soil, you want to aerate the soil. Get the air to it. Break it up. Allow water and nutrients to reach the plant's roots. Organic matter, again, you're adding that organic matter. Clay soil has nutrient. It's just locked up in the soil. It's so dense.
Yeah, adding the organic matter is going to help break up that clay. It's also going to, again, bring the worms in. Any organic matter, if you feel like, okay, I dig in my soil, I barely see any worms, even if you think your soil is healthy and well draining, you want to add organic matter because it's going to invite the worms in. You don't want to bring worms in from the outside. Worms will bring themselves in. They also will move soil around from up to 8 feet deep. They produce 1/3 pound of their own waste per year?
Yes.
Yes. And worm castings, which is worm manure, whatever you want to call it, worm droppings, is also incredibly nutrient rich for your soil. So you want to work with your ecosystem, and by adding these compost materials to your soil, the worms will be like, hey, there's food here, and they're not going to overpopulate themselves. They will take care of themselves, and they will eat your organic matter. They will leave their waste, and they will circulate all of that in your soil.
Now, with clay soil, you can add gypsum. You can aerate the soil. You can avoid walking. And then on wet soil, that's any soil, whether you got good soil or not. Designated walk areas, permanent grow paths, don't intermix the two. Compaction can be detrimental to plants and the health of your soil if you continue to walk in the areas in which you're trying to grow. You're trying to grow a tomato plant or a pepper, or you're going to try to grow root crops, and you're compressing that soil down. That is not good, because water can't penetrate through very dense soil. So you may not necessarily have a clay issue. You may have a drainage issue because of compaction. I know years ago, where I grew up on the farm, they encouraged no-till planting, which meant you plant in the fields without disturbing the soil. You come in and spray chemicals to kill the vegetation, and you plant in there the seeds that won't be killed off by that chemical. But every 7 years, and that used to be the rule, I don't know if it is anymore, the 7th year it was recommended you go in and till that soil up very good, because it's had 7 years of compaction with tractors and sprayers and combines and everything else compacting that soil. So it was, take a sponge and, for example, and just stand on it for a long time. It's not going to do very good once you take your foot off of it. So, and there is situations where it is going to be more effective time and money to build raised beds or go straw bale gardening rather than take the effort and time and materials in order to remitigate the soil in which you have or you've moved into and trying to start from scratch. The best scenario, the best situation, the best advice is go to soilsavvy.com and get a soil test to find out what you're dealing with, and then you can make the educational decision of, should I move forward and try to fix this soil issue, or is it better to put something down and then grow something as in a raised bed or container or straw bale garden?
Correct. And this will give you the answers. And then I just want to mention, yes, with you're building your soil and creating the soil you have always wanted. This, like people commonly think of this in their in-ground garden, but this could become a thing also in your raised bed. Maybe you, like Joey and I had built raised beds in 2020. We brought in compost from a local source.
Blue Ribbon Organics.
But over time, that does lose nutrients as well. And we would want to, at some point, either get a soil test or add things, whatever we need to do. So don't neglect, if you have raised beds, don't neglect that you might need some sort of soil care.
So yes, the soil does deplete in nutrient, but by adding leaves each year, by encouraging the worms to come in this situation, the raised beds, you're letting nature giving nature the opportunity to kind of revitalize the soil. Yes, you're going to have to add some fertilizer or top dressing it with new compost. But if you do the balance right and you don't suck everything out of the soil and don't put anything back in, when you suck everything out and you don't put anything back in, then you've got a very large deficit in which you have to cross in order to get back to the point where things used to be. If you keep working the soil and feeding the soil each year organically, even through organic fertilizer to mitigate some of the deficiencies or keeping it from sucking everything out of the soil, that is also a benefit. Also rotating the crops. Peppers in one bed this year, tomatoes in a different bed. One for disease control, but two, so you're not growing tomatoes in the same bed for 37 years. Can you do that? Absolutely. If you are reintroducing nutrient by compost or rotted safe manure or leaves or a combination of multiple things in that bed over and over again. But when you do that, the resistance you can cause problems for that plant if you continue to grow in the same area over and over again.
One thing I wanted to mention is you want to make sure that you do know where you're getting your compost or your manure, whatever it may be.
Killer compost, yes. I covered that.
Right. But I'm also talking about like organic compost, because sometimes it might be a situation where
free isn't good.
Like, especially if there's a city or municipality where they're like, come get the free compost that we've
third Saturday every month. Yeah. All you can take.
So that's questionable. Also, Joy and I ran into a situation where we had a sponsor who gave us soil, and there was something that happened
prior to the radio show.
Yeah, something that happened along the line where there was a bad batch.
The bad batch, the formulation was bad. They still hadn't got it figured out, but they were keep making the batches because people was buying the product.
Right. So if this were to happen
and
to
their
you,
salesperson, you had to tell them how it actually works.
Right. So you might want to make sure, like, if you purchased a whole truckload or whatever of compost, find out if there's some sort of
before you buy it, preferably.
Yeah, like, hey, if this is a bad batch, I've heard about bad batches.
Killer compost.
Yeah, or killer compost or whatever.
What's your source? What's
your source? Yeah.
What if it's a good dealer, if it's a good manufacturer, they're going to have no issue telling you, here's how it is made, here's the source, here's the material. When they go, well, it's good, trust us, back away, go somewhere else.
Absolutely. And you can find a lot of, typically if you're near a larger city, you do have options. So just keep that in mind.
Well, you do have options when it comes to dealing with those Japanese beetles that are now already flying around your yard.
If you're looking to successfully control beetles without damaging the environment, look no further than Beetle Gone from Phylum Bioproducts. Derived from a naturally occurring soil bacteria, Beetle Gone is the only organic solution that successfully controls beetle invaders. Just mix the powder with water and spray it on your plants. Once ingested, the target pests will stop feeding and die, and since it's an organic BT product, it's a great choice to use on your fruits and vegetables, in addition to your ornamental flowers and trees.
Not only does Beetle Gone work, but the best part about the product is it is safe to be used around beneficial insects such as ladybugs, butterflies, and bees, and has no water toxicity. That's Beetle Gone from BeetleGone.com. BeetleGone.com from the parent company of Phylum Bioproducts.com. That's PHYLLOM Bioproducts.com, but go to BeetleGone.com for the products that you need to control your yard. Hang out with us when we come back. Author Lee Miller will be with us. You're tuned in to the Gardening with Joy and Holly radio show.
Got a question for Joey and Holly? Send it via email anytime to gardentalkradio@gmail.com.
Water supply tanks provide BPA-free, long-term, safe storage for drinking water from 35 to 1,500-gallon tanks. Water supply tanks has you covered. From preparing for unexpected needs, off-grid property, easy gardening access, and more. For questions and to order, visit watersupplytanks.com and use coupon code GARDENING10 to save 10% off your order. Soil Diva Liquid Microbe Stimulant Spray improves the health of your plants you work hard to grow, stimulates the natural enzymes, and increases beneficial soil bacteria. Go to soildiva.net. Soildiva.net.
Take the guesswork out of composting with the AeroBin 400 or smaller 200 for easy composting. The AeroBin mimics how nature decomposes waste. The AeroBin is easy to use. You prepare your balanced organic waste, just open it up, drop it in, and close. After a short time, fertile compost is produced, which is easily accessed via the lower side door. The thermal insulation in the AeroBin conserves heat, leading to rapid breakdown of the biomass and works efficiently year-round, even in cooler regions. There is no need to turn the biomass, and it is pet and rodent resistant. It has little odor and can kill annoying weeds and seeds. It is BPA free. The AeroBin 400 or 200 comes with a reservoir at the bottom to collect the leachate. When diluted, makes for great compost tea liquid fertilizer. AeroBin composts kitchen and garden waste quickly. Easy to assemble with no special tools needed. The AeroBin makes composting rewarding and easy. Go to burpee.com or homedepot.com to purchase. Jung Seed Company is a family-owned and operated seed company since 1907 with the largest selection of seeds and plants online. Use coupon code 10TG24 to save 10% off your order at jungseed.com. That coupon code is 10TG24 at jungseed.com for 10% off.
Blue Ribbon Organics, providing locally made organic compost and soil blends for gardeners, farms, landscaping, and more. To find our products nearest you, visit blueribbonorganics.com.
Happy 65th anniversary to David J. Frank, Southeastern Wisconsin's leading landscape company. Their award-winning services include everything from lawn care, landscape maintenance, design, construction, renovation, irrigation, sustainability, and more. Big or small, let the experts at David J. Frank handle the hard work for you. Find out more at davidjfrank.com.
Welcome back to the Gardening with Joy and Holly radio show. Happy you've chosen us to be part of your day. Holly, let's go to the hotline and bring in our guest for this week.
Lee Miller is a landscape garden designer, consultant, garden coach, speaker, and award-winning garden blog author from the South Shore of Long Island, who has been involved in the horticulture industry for over 26 years. She is also the author of 5 publications. Welcome to the program, Lee.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Well, happy that you've taken time out of your day not only to educate Holly and myself, but all of our listeners. And I'll start with this. You grew up gardening. How did you get into landscaping? What was the transition? Where was that moment of, I like doing this, but the landscaping is even more fun?
Well, it's an interesting story. I feel my getting into landscape design is part life's path and part in my genes, and there's a story to tell. When I was growing up, I lived next to a neighbor that had 5 children all around the same age, and every day I would go across the street and go to her garden, Mrs. O, I call her, and she would show me her garden and take me along and identify all the plants and explain to me what they do and everything. So I took an interest. I went home and I said to my mom, I need to have some seeds and some pots. So she went and she got me some seeds, and I grew them and I nurtured them like they were my own child. And then at the age of 7, I planted my first tree with my dad. So as time went on, I went on to education. I always had an interest in science, but I took the education path. And the thing is about the genes, my mom always had an eye for being able to look at a blank space, and she could picture a vision in her mind, which is the same thing that I can do. Her brother, my uncle, was a landscape architect, and I found out that my great-grandfather was a prize-winning rosarian at Beechwood Mansion in Rhode Island back in the 1800s. So as I got older, the gardening, the path in life, I want to call it, and the genetics, it just grew. No pun intended. It just grew inside me, and I got more and more involved in gardening, and I went and I continued. While I was teaching, I went further with my education. I took some horticultural classes, and as time went on, I started designing my own landscape, and it grew and it grew and it grew. And friends and family, they saw some kind of potential in me, and they said, there's something going on here. You have an eye for gardens. Come over to my house. I'll give you dinner and design my garden. Mm-hmm. So I did. And with their encouragement, pushing me and motivating me to design for others, once again, I continued. I took more courses. I got a business license, and here I am today. So you would say partially a life path and partially genetics.
So if it wasn't for your friends kind of pushing you, do you believe you would have made the leap on your own, or was that the motivation you needed?
That was the motivation, because I was unsure of myself going into business. It was a big step. And I have a couple of friends to thank for that. I say, you're the ones that got me into this. And I absolutely love what I do, and I thank them for that, for pushing me to go ahead and do it.
That's fantastic. So what tips do you have for someone who, maybe like Joy and I, who grow vegetables and flowers, but want to possibly hire a landscape designer, but then also do some ourselves? What are some tips for somebody like that, where we're kind of DIY, but also might need professional help?
Sure. Well, my best advice would be do your homework. Know the plants, know the lighting and moisture requirements for the plants you're choosing, and also their mature size. As a designer, I run into all the time somebody telling me, I bought this little dwarf bush, and now it's overtaking my house. So you really have to do your research, because a lot of dwarf evergreens, they claim that they're dwarf, but all it means that it's a smaller cultivar of the parent plant. So I would say that do your homework. A couple of tips: when I'm designing, I always give enough space for the plants. So know the mature size of the plants, because way too often you see things all crowded in. Start with a backdrop of evergreens for all season interest. I'm going to say use curvy linear beds. It's always nice to have smooth curves. Have focal points on each end of the bed. Have a flowering tree or an evergreen, and then mix in layers of flowering shrubs and then maybe perennials in front of that. It's all about continuing a theme. Repeat the same plants throughout the garden. Group in odd numbers. That's one of the main principles in design. It's more natural looking. It gives more of a flow to the garden, and have those layers. Create a layers so you have. My big thing is interest every single month of the year, and yes, you can have interest 12 months of the year. Another important point, which I tell clients all the time: you go to a store and you buy something, and lots of times people will ask, "Can I put such and such in my garden?" And I'll say to them, that's not the right zone, because they might even be selling it. Always choose plants that are hardy to at least 1 to 2 zones colder than yours. Just in case, we've known the last couple of winters, we have gotten temperatures down in the single digits for extended periods of time. And that's going to be happening a lot more often. So best to go a couple zones lower.
Well, and in the vegetable world, we see that, there's space between the two plants. I want to put something else. But again, you've got to picture that final in August or September, what that tomato plant looks like, because you can't just shove another pepper plant in between. You got to have that spacing to allow for that growth. And the same with the trees and the shrubs and the flowers that you're speaking about.
Yes, exactly. And there's so many people that just cram it all together, and then the next thing they're doing is pulling it out, or the plant's not going to survive because they're going to compete with one another. especially with your vegetables.
And I don't blame them. It's just something that they're not swimming in it like we are daily, so they're not thinking, oh, they've never done it before, so how would they know?
Right. Well, it's a matter of, once again, doing the homework.
Right.
When you buy the plant, if it says that it's going to mature to 2 to 4 feet round, give it that space.
And we would recommend...
You might have some mulch in between. That's okay. If you want a tighter look, if you're doing a privacy screening, sure, space them closer together, but always allow sufficient spacing.
And consult with a landscaper like you, and we encourage people to go to their local independent garden center where they have people who know what they're talking about. Correct.
And you can do it, and there's a lot of people that like to do it themselves, and that's great. That is terrific. There's so much satisfaction to it. Just tread lightly.
Right.
Do it carefully. And then when they lay out the beds, also is another tip. Take a hose or spray paint or flags and lay your bed out. Lay all your plants out before you plant. That way you can see how much space there is in between.
Those are some great tips. So your most recent book, Shade Gardening for the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic, A Guide to Planting the Ultimate Shade Garden. Tell us more about your book. If our listeners pick up a copy, what can they expect, and just maybe something to pique their interest?
Oh, okay. Well, the thing that motivated me to write this book is that very often I get requests from clients ask me, saying, what can I plant in shade? They're so frustrated, and they can't get anything to live, and the simple reason is they're not planting the right plant in the right place. So what I decided to do, I started searching around the Internet for shade gardening books. And what I noticed was that every one that I came across, they listed the plants in alphabetical order. And I'm thinking, okay, I was also an educator for 32 years. So as an educator, I looked at it and said, okay, listing them in alphabetical order, that's not really helping me. That's not telling me right off which ones are evergreens, which ones are flowering, which ones are perennials. So I decided to put something together that would be a little bit more comprehensive, along with also explaining, as our gardens mature, you're more likely to get more and more shade over time as trees grow. It's going to make more of a canopy. So what I had done was I went through all the different plants I've been using for the last 30-something odd years on my designs, and I organized it into a friendly reference that would go according to plant type, as I had mentioned. And it just made it so much more comprehensive. And then I would also say what the plant requires, how to take care of the plant. I did a section on diseases because that's big. When you're planting something, you need to know if there's a certain disease that it's prone to, how to treat it, and pretty much it's all about being proactive. If you have all that information in a reference, you could take that reference and say, okay, these are my evergreens, these are my flowering shrubs, these are my perennials, this is how I plant it, this is how I take care of it, et cetera, et cetera. So it's all about making a comprehensive, easy to follow reference for folks to plant their shade garden.
Well, speaking of shade, approximately how much shade is enough shade for, quote-unquote, a shade plant or a shade garden?
That's a very good question. Shade is defined in different ways. Generally, if an area is considered partial shade, it's receiving about 2 to 4 hours of sun during the day, preferably in the morning, and then some later afternoon sun, while full shade refers to an area receiving less than 2 hours of sunlight. Areas where I've done plenty of gardens like this, where someone has a lot of trees in the backyard, and it's kind of a dapple shade throughout the entire day. You have a little bit of sunlight, you have a little bit of shade. That is the perfect scenario for planting a lovely shade garden.
Well, that's very, very helpful to know. So, speaking of more shade, what are some of your most, foolproof shade garden plants, especially perennials, and what are ones that newbies should possibly avoid?
Oh, there's so many. Some of the easiest ones, I would say, everybody knows hostas. Some people love hostas, some people hate hostas. And if you have deer, don't plant them. But hostas are very easy to take care of. Ferns, the Japanese forest grass, Halconia grass, is very nice. Variegated liriope. There's different types of liriope that's variegated in this green. I love the variegated. It's kind of a yellow and green grass-like leaf, and it gets little purple flowers later in the summer into the fall, and it's very low maintenance. All you have to do is cut it back in spring, not in fall, because that could jeopardize the crown of the plant, but you cut it back in springtime, and it flushes back all new growth. Astilbe is lovely. Coral bells. Euchera. There are so many varieties of coral bells. My favorites are Palace Purple, which is a deep burgundy color, and Caramel, which is just that caramel colored. You mix the two of those together, put it along with some liriope, which is the variegated grass, or sedge, golden sedge, and you have the burgundy, you've got the caramel, and you've got the gold, and it's magnificent. It's a perfect mix. As far as shrubs, skip laurel, excellent for privacy, take shade. Cherry laurel is a lower form, both broadleaf evergreens, dark green leaves, and little white flowers in spring. Boxwood, there's variegated, there's the regular green boxwood, there's an upright, there's all different types of boxwood. Akuba, underused in my opinion. Akuba is broadleaf evergreen, green with yellow spots, and it thrives in shade. Osmanthus, or false holly, is another beautiful shrub. I use it all the time in shade. Variegated foliage. The new growth gets little pink tips on it. There's different types. I use, for the listeners, Goshiki is your best one. It's the nicest coloration, and it's also the slowest growing and only grows, I want to say between 4 and 6 feet, but it's rarely see it get that big. You can easily prune it. Lucosi is a nice broadleaf evergreen. Hydrangea, of course. I find that oak leaf hydrangeas seem to perform the best in shade out of the different ones. And, of course, you have rhododendrons and azaleas, which brings us to, I believe you asked which ones to avoid or could cause problems.
Correct.
Well, the skip laurel and cherry laurel, I use them all the time. And I encourage any gardener to use them. The only thing is you have to know, because they're broadleaf evergreens, and with our changing crazy weather conditions, with the wet springs and whatnot, they are prone to something called shot hole fungus. It looks like bullet holes in the leaves. If you see the round circles in the leaves, if you know what it is, you simply spray it with a fungicide. So they're beautiful plants, but yes, a little more work. I'm also going to have to mention rhododendrons, unfortunately. Rhododendrons are absolutely beautiful for shade. I have been finding over the last 3 years, as a matter of fact, that the established rhododendrons are still doing very well. But for some reason, the newly planted rhododendrons, it's the shock freezes in the wintertime. They're taking them out. So you kind of have to be careful with that, as far as that. But once again, the moral of the story is, if you know the plant, what it's susceptible to, and you know how to treat it, it's as simple as spraying the plant to control it. Yeah.
Right. Well, Lee, we greatly appreciate the time you've offered Holly, myself, and all of our listeners, and the education. How can people find out more about you and pick up your book?
Well, you can simply search Lee Miller Gardening on the net, and my website, Landscape Design by Lee will show up. That's my business site. My blogs, I have 2 blogs, a guide to Northeastern gardening and a guide to landscape design and maintenance will pop up, and also my 5 books will pop up. And to find the books, you can also go on, they're available on Amazon. Simply search Lee Miller Gardening, and you'll find me.
Well, Lee, thank you so much for the information and the education you provided Holly and myself. We thank you very much for the time you've offered.
Well, thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. And when we come back, it's Your Garden Questions and Our Garden Answers. You're tuned into the Gardening with Joey and Holly radio show.
Have a garden question? Give Joey and Holly a call now or anytime 24/7. Just dial 1-800-927-SHOW. If you can't get through, leave a message and they will call you back. Call now, 1-800-927-SHOW.
A non-selective herbicide that is also USDA Bio-Preferred certified? You bet. Say goodbye to Roundup and hello to No More Weeds by Naturally Green Products. No More Weeds kills weeds with no harsh chemicals and no glyphosate. Safe around pets, No More Weeds has a proprietary sticking agent to use around gardens, pools, decks, patios, anywhere there are weeds. Available online at natgreenproducts.com, Amazon, and Walmart.com. Order yours today. The same great company that brings you no more bugs.
Your mosquito frustrations are over. Now with Mega Catch, suitable for residential and commercial use. Mega Catch mosquito traps produce a vast array of mosquito-attracted stimuli, including safe CO2, and can attract mosquitoes and other biting insects up to 150 feet away. Easy to use and set up. The Mega Catch is ready to make your outdoor space comfortable and enjoyable at megacatch.com. Use coupon code JOEYB, my name Joey B, at checkout and receive 20% discount on your entire trap order at megacatch.com.
Wind River Chimes will always be the inspiring harmony. With a large selection and customization options, you will find the sound that soothes you. Visit windriverchimes.com to shop and find out more. Deer Defeat is an all-natural based animal repellent to keep deer and rabbits away from your valuable plants that is odorless after 30 minutes and dries clear. It creates a continuous, invisible shield to protect your plants. Works for 30 days through rain, snow, and freeze. Will not clog your sprayer. Apply to your property without environmental damage. You can spray directly onto your plants up to flowering, then apply around your plants to continue protection. No need to reapply. Money back guarantee. To purchase, go to deerdefeat.com and use coupon code RADIO to save 10% off your order. Protect your plants from damage with the 3-in-1 Plant Guard and Special Blend Fertilizer. Visit ivorganics.com, use promo code RADIO10 to save 10% off your order. Garden like a pro in 3 easy steps and receive customized fertilizer recommendations for your garden or lawn. Soil Savvy helps you determine what nutrients your plants need to thrive. Never again over-apply nutrients they don't need. A patented process that makes you a smart gardener. To get your soil test kit, go to mysoilsavvy.com.
Have insects such as aphids or fungal gnats invaded your plants? Fight back with Summit Year-Round Spray Oil and Summit Mosquito Bits. Organic Summit Year-Round Spray Oil kills insect pests on indoor and outdoor plants. All natural mosquito bits kill fungal gnats larvae in container plants. Both products are harmless to people, plants, and wildlife. Summit Year-Round Spray Oil and Summit Mosquito Bit are available at garden centers, hardware stores, and at summitresponsiblesolutions.com. Welcome back to the Gardening with Joey and Holly radio show. Thank you so much for being with us. It's time for your garden questions and our garden answers. If you've got a question, send it on over to gardentalkradio@gmail.com. That's gardentalkradio@gmail.com. Or you can give us a call, toll free, coast to coast at 1-800-927-SHOW. That's 1-800-927-7469. Again, gardentalkradio@gmail.com or toll free at 1-800-927-SHOW. Had questions? We'll see what we can get through to the top of the hour, Holly.
I planted my Brussels sprouts earlier this summer. Should I have waited? They seem to be growing slowly. This is my second time planting Brussels sprouts. I'm not sure. The last time, I think I harvested them too early.
Yeah, they're a long-growing, long-season plant that's going to take about 120 days to reach maturity. So patience is important here. Otherwise, you are not going to get Brussels sprouts. So what you need to do is to wait until the sprouts are as large as possible, preferably before the first hard freeze. Now, to get those sprouts as large as you possibly can, you want to top the plant off, meaning about 45 days before you would think you're going to harvest, or better rule of judgment is when you see the sprouts beginning to develop in the joints of the plant, like where the leaves and the stalk connect, you want to you want to cut the top 6 inches of your plant off. Don't be scared. It's going to stop the vertical growth and put on more energy into the sprouts themselves. Some people will cut the leaves off and lower. Don't do that. Just cut the top 6 inches of the plant off when you see those sprouts begin to form, and you will be amazed how big and large your Brussels sprouts are. And do not worry about, if you've had store-bought Brussels sprouts, yeah, they're horrible. But if you have not had homegrown Brussels sprouts, they are a delight that you have never experienced before.
They are delicious. And a lot of times when you have store-bought, or maybe when you were a kid, you had them cooked for you and they were mushy and possibly like overcooked or overboiled. There are so many delicious Brussels sprout recipes, roasted Brussels sprouts. You can even do them in the air fryer. They get really tasty and kind of crispy on the outside. So there's a lot of, don't be discouraged about the future and you and your Brussels sprouts.
All right. Next question is, what do we got? Is there a best time to get a soil test, and how often should I get one?
I wouldn't say there's like a best time. I don't think there's a best time.
I would say every 3 to 5 years, or when you start seeing significant plant problems by discoloration.
They meant time of year.
Time of year. Oh, time of year.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think maybe midsummer would be okay.
Well, here you can do a soil test at any time. However, everybody and 7 people get it done right before spring. So your best time in which, and they process, if we're speaking about soilsavvy.com, gives you 16 points of analyzation and tells you what you need and don't need and how recommendations to get your soil where you want it to. The best time is to do it in the fall, because nobody's thinking about soil tests in the fall. Everybody's shutting down. We're done for the year. And everybody comes, March, April, got to get a soil test, and they're flooded and things are backed up. So get it in the fall, and you follow the recommendations. Just don't, if it says so many samples and so many things, don't give them more, don't give them less. Do exactly what the test says, the instructions, so you get the proper information and you know exactly what you need to do in order to not waste time or money getting your soil healthy for the plants you're wanting to grow.
Absolutely. So
I do have, let's see. Is it worth investing in the expensive garden tools versus the cheap ones? I'm
going to say your mileage may vary. Okay, so like, for example, if you buy a trowel and you look at that trowel and it costs you $3, and you can see that if you're like a mad garden digger and you're going to break that trowel because it has like a thin little handle, then you might want to invest in something that has like the steel all the way throughout.
Cheap welds and multiple pieces welded together versus like a one forged piece of cast aluminum or stainless steel or metal, iron, whatever you want to talk about.
So I think you have to think about how often you're going to use it, maybe how aggressive you are on things. Like, for example, if you have a shovel and you're like, I'm just going to move, some material around occasionally, I'm not going to be very hard on it. Something that's cheaper might last you for a long time. But if it's something that you're going to use frequently, I feel like it's worth the investment to get the more expensive one because it's likely going to last you longer.
Well, here's the other thing in that. Yeah, you can go to the garden center and spend 8, 12, 15, fill in the blank for a shovel, a trowel, a hoe, a rake, whatever. Yard sales. And the old tools, if they are still around, they probably were made pretty good. The shovels with the support around the base, where the metal brackets to hold everything together, even stronger than the new stuff. Old shovels, you can get them for very, very cheap. Even on junk day, you can see things thrown alongside the road. So cheap or free, if it lasts a couple of years, is better than buying something at the store. You're recycling, reusing, reducing, that little triangle thing. However, if you're going to go the route of I'm going to buy, you also want to examine yourself. Are you lazy? Are you forgetful? Do you leave things out in the yard that shouldn't be left in the yard? Meaning, if you're going to forget your tools, you might not want to invest in a wooden-handled shovel. You might want to go with fiberglass, because wood will absorb water and rot eventually. And here you're trying to dig, and snap goes the shovel, and you got to go buy a new one because you left it out for 3 years and you forgot about it.
Exactly. No, and that's very true. If you take care, I think, again, it's your mileage may vary. So if you take care of your tools.
Some people love their tools more than they love their children.
Yes. So if you take care of what you have, it might last you longer versus, again, if you leave it out in the yard or all of a sudden your children are playing sword fight with it, who knows?
You playing sword fight with it with the neighbors.
With the neighbors.
Yeah, get away from here. Get them. No violence. Don't hit your neighbors.
Yeah, no, probably not. Don't go down that road.
Okay, I do have one question. Much of my thistle problem is near a small boxwood bush and other ornamentals. If I use horticultural grade vinegar from natgreenproducts.com, will it also kill my other plants that I still want? Also, is it harmful to my digging dog? Well, horticultural grade vinegar is vinegar that is based on the manufacturer between 20 and 45% vinegar. It's not your store-bought vinegar that's 3 to 5%. We spoke about this a couple of times, and people still swear online that, I use it and it's the greatest thing in the world. It's not. I don't know what they're using, and the weeds are just laughing. So you want to add, when you use. I
just want to, unless there's pictures or video.
Yeah,
I wouldn't trust some clown who's like, I use it all the time.
It's like these memes with no documentation, no sources. They just make... Anyway, the horticultural grade vinegar, it is a non-selective spray, which means it will burn anything that you spray it on. Higher the percentile of vinegar percentage, the more damage, the quicker it will do. It's not a glyphosate. It's not going to go in the leaves to the roots and the plant's dead. You may have to apply a couple of times in order to what they call burn the plant or kill the plant that way. It's only going to kill what you spray on it. And it's a vinegar, so it's not going to toxify. I mean, we're not putting gallons of vinegar in and around the grasses, around the tree, where the dog is going to dig up and get poisoned because of it. You're going to be totally fine. Follow the recommended rates on the bottle. That's why they're there. And you're not going to, once it dries, it's not going to affect your animal, your pet at all. So with that being said, we are out of time, and we thank you for yours. We've come to the portion of the program where we talk about what we've learned today.
So I know I've learned this a number of times, but I just always like when we talk about killer compost, because I think it reminds people, A, to know where their compost is coming from, and B, unfortunately we're at the point in life where you can't just be like, oh, this came from my neighbor and I can just dump it all over my garden.
I don't know if we was ever at that point. We were many generations were naive, but also the toxicity has increased from generation to generation.
But I'm saying that it's like a good and bad, pro and con.
I learned, our guest Lee Miller, she was a gardener, and then it was her friends that really pushed her into the role of what she does now in landscaping. So sometimes we need to listen to our friends. Sometimes we need to listen to our friends cautiously, and sometimes we need to tell our friends to go shove it. And make a wise decision on your own. Life lessons.
Life lessons.
What we've learned today is brought to you by Honeybee Healthy.
Whether you're a gardener, a bee hobbyist, or a professional beekeeper, Honeybee Healthy Inc. has the products to help you maintain a healthy and thriving hive garden. For more information on how to use Honeybee Healthy in your garden, visit honeybeehealthy.com.
When we tune in next week to the program, where we'll be discussing saving your seeds this fall, as well as post-pandemic gardening, what happened and where are we at right now from the big peak that we once were. And our guest is author and forager Tlema Matuska Wong will be with us and will answer your garden questions. So until next week, for
Holly Baird,
I'm Joy Baird, and we will see you in the garden.